I like to do these panels a little more discussion-based and interactive, and I don't wait till the end for Q&A. I don't know about you, but by the time we get to the end, I forget my question sometimes, what it was. Maybe that's me. I'm getting over a cold. Who knows? Also, I like to make things story-based. We're in entertainment. I'm not in dry conference. Are you in dry? Like, is that your business? I don't like it. So, humor, levity, conversational. Let's enjoy this. These are creatives and industry executives and people with amazingly diverse backgrounds. A lot of the focus, we are webcasting, and we're webcasting to a lot of students in the Cal State University system. That's where I work. I work for the entire system. If you don't know, there's the UC system, the public university system, 10 campuses, and the Cal State system, which is 23 campuses across the state. So I represent all of the entertainment arts. Oh, I love you. Sorry. Welcome, Nicholas Pepper. Don't be sorry. I'm glad to see you.
I think I lost my extra space, so just slide it a bit like that. That's all.
Give me my script.
Are you moving back?
Oh, Pepper. Yes.
Okay.
The three of us went to graduate school together. That's why there was the love. I know. So don't be a jerk, because stay in touch with people. Be a good person. They might do nice things for you later. That's you. I'm very happy to see you. I was just saying I work for, you don't know this right now, but I work for the California State University system, 23 campuses, and I represent the arts and entertainment studies programs, faculty, and students. So what we do is bring the industry to campuses and students and faculty in diverse ways, programs, grants, and vice versa. If you need an intern, please come to me. Because somewhere I've heard or read that there's a demand in the tech and entertainment industry for diversity, and that's what we are. Like, we are America. We are hardworking, a lot of first generation, amazingly diverse students wanting to get into the industry in some of the top rated industry programs. Anything from animation to gaming to acting, theater, television, broadcast news, you name it. That's about 180 programs on 23 campuses. So representing a lot of people, there's 2.5 of us. But I do get back to people. Has everybody read the bios online of these amazing people? Because I don't like to waste time going through every detail, but I will ask them how they got where they are and some storytelling. But raise your hand if you work in television. Raise your hand if you work in more commercial Hollywood entertainment.
You mean like commercials?
No, commercial versus indie.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Raise your hand if you work in a transmedia, multi-platform world. Yeah, see? So we're representing a lot of the gamut here. Raise your hand if you didn't initially start in the field you are in now. You are in a different trajectory. Could still be entertainment and arts. See that? It's really interesting. So we're going to find out those stories behind it, and you're welcome to interject at any time. So, back to the panel. The CSU EA, where I work, is a small initiative, one of 4 of the drivers of the California economy. You all realize that entertainment is one of the biggest drivers of the California economy, multi-billion-dollar industry. So not only do we represent students, but we also work to align our curriculum with what's going on and the changes and trends in the industry. And there's this weird thing called virtual reality. I've heard about it. I don't know what that is. Been working on that one, you guys. I'm thrilled to be part of Digital Hollywood. This is the second year, actually, first full year, second Digital Hollywood, where we've had this kind of university education platform. This year he's calling it the University Project. And it was sort of a brainchild between Victor and I a year ago, exactly, at a Digital Hollywood I was at. It's the first time any conference, industry-related trade show has gotten together with academia, with higher education, with education in general, to allow students the opportunity to attend, and faculty as well, be a part of this out-of-classroom learning, networking experience. And, you know, it's like industry boot camp these 4 days. And also, it's heavily based on current and future trends, which sometimes, I'm being nice, sometimes students aren't getting on campuses. $25 a student can physically come to all days of this conference. So I want to give my hats off to Victor Harwood for making that possible. I think it's amazing. And, of course, they can webcast into their classrooms. So future reference, it's being opened up to all diverse campuses and universities. So come speak to me or Victor about opportunities in that area. Current speakers we have on the platform. All the way at the end there is Shannon Flynn, who's now an amazing television director. And instead of me speaking to what you do, I'd love for you to talk about not just what you do now. Do you call it children? What is the title for the shows you direct? Tweenie World?
I am moving out of that and into the adult realm of television.
Wait, you must clarify.
Not Chatsworth. No, I got my start directing a little show called Hannah Montana about 10 years ago, a multicam television show. Before that, I had been mentored by an amazing woman, Lee Shallett Schemmel, who is comedy director, been working in the industry for a long time, but had a similar background to me in that she started in theater as a theater director and then worked her way into television based on an ABC initiative to garner more women television directors back in the 80s. Glad to see nothing. No. Anyway, more.
Shannon's a unicorn. She's a woman television. Hello. Welcome to our bursting group
I'm
of
moving over.
panel.
Anyway, so bottom line is I started on Hannah Montana doing multicam. I've worked my way into single cam and now digital and web series as well.
Great. Look at this.
Where, you want to put it here? Okay. Then we'll scooch back this way.
So I'm going to riff off this. I'm not going to go in order because that's boring too to me. I don't know why. But because she mentioned that she got her initial start in theater, where would that be, by the way, Shannon Flynn?
I'm sorry, where?
Where did you start in theater? Where was that?
Orange Coast College.
And
in
then where?
Costa Mesa. And then I went on to get my bachelor's degree in English education with an emphasis on poetry at Cal State Long Beach.
That's right. It's a Cal State.
Poetry.
So but then you went to
Poetry.
theater because you like making a lot of money, right?
Oh, yes.
Did you study philosophy as well?
I went from poetry to
So-
theater. Such a huge step up, economically
Step
speaking, in terms of advancement.
ladder. Right. And
Actually, I was going to be a high school teacher and decided that I didn't have what it took to be a high school teacher.
And yet you're still working with
I
kids.
know- well,
And then you
but
have-
yeah.
What do you have, like 17 of your own now? Is that?
Yeah, at least. I'm the
Yeah.
old woman that lives in a shoe.
Yeah.
I have three. I have 3 kids.
3 kids. Yeah. To me, it's 17.
Yeah. Feels like
so,
15.
and where did you go to graduate school?
The Yale School of Drama.
That is correct. Where you met?
The illustrious Simone Nelson.
No, that's not-
Alice Pepper. But also from drama school, one of the things that I would really encourage anybody who's still in school, and I would do this at the Cal State too, which is because we have a really active alumni program, I was able to facilitate a lot of shadowing opportunities from the directing alumni from the drama school when I moved back to Los Angeles, and just by virtue of the fact that I asked. So that was the biggest thing that I had to do, was just get over my fear and pick up the 5,000-pound telephone and call people and ask them if I could come hang out and eat craft service. So,
And how long did you do that? I admire this woman so much. How long did you shadow?
3 years. 3 years without pay of shadowing, taking on an assistant position, small stipend eventually, to learn everything I possibly could from this person, Lee, that who wanted to teach me. She wanted me to learn, and I wanted to learn from her, and so I was willing to wait tables, clean toilets, whatever I could do in order to make my rent and then be able to learn from one of the most amazing comedy directors in working. And there was no ego involved because it was the best 3-year boot camp that I could have attended. And that was in conjunction with all of the education that I got, which was a storytelling element, because ultimately what I'm doing in television and film is telling a story, a visual story. And one of the realizations that I had recently is that my brain doesn't work the way other people's brains work, which is not a bad thing. It's just that I see things, you know what I mean? Like, I see the way to tell the story and the way to tell the story properly in a way that works and that's funny. So, I just didn't realize that other people don't have that ability. But my point being, to be able to learn how to take that from my brain and articulate it in a way that was visually possible was one of the things that I got to learn in those 3 years, watching somebody else work until I had the opportunity to do it myself.
Fabulous. And riffing off your background in theater, I'm going to go, just because I know you, to Nick, because he's also made an interesting transition career-wise. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are now?
I was an actor for 15 years until 29, primarily stage acting, doing plays around the world, and then graduated from grad school with these two lovely ladies, and
Knuckleheads.
and realized that as an actor, you're not in control of the story, and I wanted to be more at the epicenter of the genesis of it, of the crafting of it, and figuring out the best way to kind of present it to an audience. And so I moved here, threw away my headshot and resume, and started over as an assistant in reality television for 2 years. And from there, I got a job as a low-level executive at ABC in their alternative and specials department. Worked there for a year and a half and moved to scripted programming as a current executive at ABC the year that Lost and Desperate Housewives launched. So kind of caught the wave of one of the last great kind of waves of television. Was fortunate enough to work and cover Lost, Desperate Housewives, Ugly Betty, Brothers and Sisters, a show called Pushing Daisies, and Commander-in-Chief for several years. And
What did you actually do while working on those shows?
my job was to make sure that the shows retained a sense of themselves through the process. So I worked with the show. I mean, technically I'm the showrunner's boss, but no showrunner would like to hear that term. So I was the network representative to the show and the show's representative to the network. My job was to maintain the creative integrity and the kind of consistency of the show. If you think about TV having three main principles, it needs to feel entertaining, it needs to feel relevant, and it needs to feel consistent. That's the job, is to make sure that those three things are maintained. From there, I went into development and developed shows for ABC as a network executive and then as a studio executive, and then moved to be a partner to a producer named Mark Gordon and run his television side when we were under a deal at ABC Studios. In the last year and a half, we branched out from our deal at ABC Studios and created a new company, which is an independent studio and production company. It's kind of the only of its kind in Hollywood. And what we do is we wanted flexibility to create content and programming for any form of the appropriate form for whatever the story is taking. So we focus primarily on television, so we have 7 shows on the air. And we do a lot of network television. We do a little bit in cable, which we're expanding upon, and focusing on streaming and digital. And then in alternative forms of content and storytelling, so like anything that hopefully is on the cutting edge of being monetized, because we have to run a business. So like things like Awesomeness or Fresno, looking at the Facebook platform, and trying to keep up with the kind of new platforms that are emerging for different types of storytelling. So that's our focus. And the point of the company is to be incredibly nimble and agile and flexible, and to be able to adjust for wherever we need to go, but to create very high content, high entertainment and high quality content. So if you think of us like, if you think of a traditional studio and think of a traditional producer, and then meet halfway in between, we do both.
Awesome. Speaking of awesomeness, isn't that one of your new shows? Conviction?
Oh, me? Awesomeness, yes.
yeah,
work with
I had awesomeness when you were at this.
Conviction is one of our new shows.
Yeah, just, that's a new show, so I put it
Destiny
up there.
Survivor is a little bit more of a show this year.
Okay,
That one is.
good to know, good to know. With your background, though, what would you say some of the things you learned in that world that you actually apply to this whole new field, same industry, if anything? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I mean, what I find fascinating about, like, I'm fascinated by virtual reality, AR, the kind of future of storytelling and the interactivity of storytelling. I think what's really amazing is to see how people consume content. That's where I start from. Growing up, it was all about going to movies because I'm poor and from Northern California, and going to a movie was a big deal. So movies were the be-all and end-all to me. And then I found television, which we had 3 channels at the time, so I'm old. And television was a super interesting thing because I sit in my underwear eating my ice cream, watching TV in like my intimate space. And so the storytelling is very different, and you want to create something you come back to on a week-to-week basis. And now holding it in my hands, and I think that there's a really fascinating way to approach storytelling that involves the audience in a different way, and that creates a relationship with them. And for me, the reason why I wanted to be at the center of storytelling was that I think storytelling changes the world. I think it's the only thing that gets a large community of people to actually re-examine how they live their life, and to reevaluate their actions in the world, what they believe in, what they think, and change it. And I think it's an incredibly powerful thing to do. And so when you can actually do it with your hands versus just in your space, I think it's a very powerful and interesting thing to kind of dive into. It's also interesting to me because coming from a traditional place like ABC, which, love it or leave it, there is great programming everywhere and there's terrible programming everywhere, and it's all a matter of taste. The new form, digital content, allows you to tell stories as to sell advertising, which is what that format is. So for me, movies are presentational, and it's a social contract where you sit in the audience and you pay your $16 plus your babysitter and your gas and all the other costs. You pay $100 to go see a movie, which is insane. And then TV is kind of it basically is based on selling cars in the 1950s, which is really how it started. And this is a new way to appeal to an audience that doesn't want to go to the movie theater and doesn't want to watch TV. And so to me, it's a way of speaking to a generation that is inheriting the world that we're leaving to them.
Okay, now that you've scared everybody. Daniel, who also works in television for the El Rey Network. Does everyone know the El Rey Network? Robert Rodriguez is not so new, but slightly new
3 years,
venture.
yeah.
Do you want
Launched,
to talk about what you
just
do
south
and
of
how you
3
got
years
there?
ago.
3 years ago, but
Yeah.
you came on within a
The
year.
last 5.5 months.
5.5. How has it been? I think I met him
He
the
saw me
first
right
week.
when I started, yeah.
Right,
First
the first
week.
week. And then you must be on a panel. I got him to say yes. So tell us what, it's up there on the screen, El Rey's about, and what kind of work you do, and how did you get to where you are now? Because you're the general manager and the president,
Yes.
the big cheese, as I call you.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'm going to put that on my card, by the way. Just big cheese.
It works.
That flies. So I'll give you the log line of El Rey, which really what it's about is it's a global multi-platform brand that represents the voices, taste, lifestyle of culturally diverse people everywhere, right? So that's really who we are, right? But what does that mean? So you just said it. The network started as the Robert Rodriguez Network, and it was really for people people who like the types of things Robert likes. And what I'm there to do very specifically is take that from really being defined as the Robert Rodriguez Network to the El Rey brand. Because one of the things that attracted me about this company, why I joined this company, was not to come in and run a cable network. It was come in because the brand had purpose and meaning in a culturally diverse world that we live in. And so if our messaging, our content, our programming represents culturally diverse people everywhere, and who's in front of the camera and behind the camera and tell the right stories, that's something very important, something that's not happening enough in television or to do that. So that's why I joined. How I got here and why this was an important mission for me is I actually started my career I'll be brief. It was Mesa, Arizona, year out of college, waiting tables. dreamt of being a producer, had no idea what that meant, but I was just odd and wanted to be a producer. I was fortunate enough to one day in a bar meet a producer at a local station, asked him for his number. He told me about an internship. Somehow, I wasn't a college student, I got that internship, and kind of hung out for 4 months for free, just doing things. At one point, somebody must have thought I worked there. Somehow, somebody asked me to write and produce a syndicated special that was called Streetwise. It won 2 local Rocky Mountain Emmys. And suddenly, I became a writer and producer in Phoenix, Arizona. And did that for a couple of years on a number of projects. Moved to LA. I was offered a job to start at a startup syndication company that within a year became CBS Enterprises. And overseeing programming. So I was a development executive over syndicated shows, scripted and non-scripted. Loved scripted so much, I left to join Bob Papazian and Jim Hirsch, who were scripted showrunners on Nash Bridges at the time. We developed and sold the HBO series Rome, which was a big event program at the time, and led the way for a lot of similar shows today.
Game of Thrones.
Huh? Game of Thrones, yeah. Deadwood, a lot of shows came out of it. I then got a call to leave scripted and restart the Fox Lab, which was an incubator that Peter Chernin and Stephen Chow started in the 80s. They shut it down with Brian Graydon in 96, brought it back with me in 2002, and it was an opportunity to be experimental, something that I learned on the local level, which is how do I work with young, brilliant people that ultimately you're not getting a show handed to, but we could pair with experienced showrunners and then launch shows that weren't going to be traditionally developed. So Classmates.com, that first Convergence show came out of that. But also the Mobile-sode, some of those things that came out of the lab and 20th Television. And so in 2005, I said, I'm going to make TV for cell phones, which at that time, there really wasn't quite such a thing. But with Verizon's VCast, it had just started. So I would run around and tell people that I was going to make TV for this, but the problem was trying to get people to look at it this way and not this way. And I would talk about applications, video applications. Nobody knew what that was. Well, I did that for 6 years, and we became the largest producer and distributor of mobile content in the country. Across all the major carriers, a lot worldwide. It was all original content. We were producing, thousands of episodes. We sold that company, started a digital publishing company, sold that company, went to Bjorn and Murray. CJ convinced me I had to go work with Gil Goldshine and John Murray, and we built their digital group. And then, I'm kind of moving fast, but through all of that experience, what I saw, what we did at GoTV, what we were doing at Bjorn and Murray was all about brand. Brand was critical to me. If you had the right brand, then it just was about content. What could you create? Whether it was digital or television, it didn't matter. And so Machinima was one of those brands that I thought, wow, that's a brand that means something to a lot of people. And it's not about an age. You could be 18, you could be 54, you love gaming. It's about the psychographic. So I went to Machinima, and I was the chief content officer. When I left, we were producing 600 hours of original content, all paid for, on different platforms beyond YouTube. And then I got the call about El Rey. And what was very specific about El Rey, again, is the brand and the fact that it could cross-end. Well, our audience, it's not about being millennials, it's not being, cable viewers, 35 plus, digital viewers, 18 to 34, but again, spans a broad base. It's a question of, do they feel something passionate about the brand? Are you a curator that somebody can trust? And that's something that I believed El Rey was. So all those years of television, scripted, non-scripted news, information, everything I've produced made sense to come to a brand like El Rey so that I could expand it globally. That's it.
Thank you for, it was like the history of the world in 1 minute, which is an amazing trait you have to do. That's a skill.
Right. Well, thank you.
Also, I can see marketing is important to you. Love your hat. You're very smart.
Thank you.
Webcast, very good, very good. Also,
for
I did not
everybody?
know how to pronounce.
But I can bring, I'll send you one.
Mashima. Mashima, thank you for giving me the pronounce. See? Machinima. Yeah.
Machine and cinema.
Cinema.
Yeah, that makes sense, but I didn't do it right. So still on the television world, we have Brandon, an agent for CAA, because you focus on television, right? That's your department at CAA. Can
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Do they know you're here? Is that what?
I'm a ninja.
Is this? Okay, it's Brendan Lawrence's day off. Go Ferris. Tell us exactly what you do, how you represent your clients, and what you do at CAA And if you could simultaneously, it doesn't have to be like Daniel's,
Got it.
but how you got there.
Oh, for sure. So thank y'all for having me. My name is Brandon Lawrence. I work in the TV scripted department at CAA. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and at CAA what we do, we essentially represent writers, producers, directors. In my department, we represent those who, showrunners who create shows. We help people find their voices on whatever respective medium they wish to put their voice on. So in my specific realm of expertise, I work in the scripted department, so I get to work with individuals like Nick, individuals like Daniel, who I've spoken on the phone with numerous times, and we just try to help them find their, whatever it is that they want to do, we help them do it. We get it done. And ultimately, we have to get it done in a very, very quick amount of time, or at the end of the day, understanding that the business relies itself on delayed gratification, which is the process of television. In the juxtaposing time, it is a long time to get a lot of great projects put on the air. But at the same time, what's different than features is that we do have like a ticking time bomb that kind of comes off, whether or not it's pitch season or development season or pilot season. There is a result that kind of gets there in a reasonable amount of time, which helps me kind of stay sane, so to speak, as a representative. And how I got here, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia originally. I am not from the West Coast. I have no family on the West Coast. I went to Morehouse College, which is a historically black college, all male in Atlanta, Georgia. And I actually started off being an investment banker on Wall Street. And I graduated the year the market crashed. So I interned at Lehman Brothers. I'm single-handedly responsible for The Big Short. And I interned at Lehman in summer '07, interned at Merrill Lynch summer '08, got a full-time offer in summer '08. The market crashed. I started at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, the new company, and it was miserable. I started to think about what I was passionate about, and I was always passionate about voices and helping people do that because I was the editor-in-chief of my newspaper in college. And from there, I went to USA Network, and I started setting finance budgets for television shows for USA. So Suits, Burn Notice, White Collar, I worked for the CFO, and I essentially helped figure out what a network makes and loses money based off of. So that was the opportunity for me to see the business side of entertainment. From there, I started to see that there was another merger coming, i.e. Comcast, and I was essentially laid off, and I was given a choice. Do I try to become a finance professional again in New York, or do I roll the dice, bet the house on myself, and move to LA? I did that, and I started working as an assistant at CAA, and I worked for a gentleman who, at the time, my first show that I actually heard become an idea on the phone and then be on screen was Power. And then Empire, and then Underground. So I was setting pitch meetings for those type of shows, and once I saw that, I was like, I actually would like to be an agent. So that is exactly what happened, and I was promoted recently, so thank you.
Congratulations. That was good. That was right to the point. So I'm seeing a thread here of, dare I say, there's what I call the suck it up quotient, like, yeah, you have to start as someone's assistant and learn from somebody and build a career. Unless you're one of those people and your dad runs a film studio, I don't know. But to us, it's like, how do I describe to students? The entertainment industry, obviously we know, is one of the hardest to break into, right? So, I see another thread of kind of a combination of luck and timing. You know, there's talent and charm and education, and then there's being in the right place at the right time. But you still need that openness, willingness to take a risk, the suck it up quotient, to make everything magically all happen. That's what it seems to sound like. We'll hear more from, before we, so we're going to venture from television now, more into film. I see you over there, Sam. I do, I see you. Sam works for Focus Features. Tell us what you do at Focus Features and how you got there.
Well, my dad runs the studio.
Yeah.
I actually came up knowing Brandon. We used to talk on the phone when I worked at HBO 5 years ago.
Did you ever meet in person?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. And I didn't know until now that we both have a similar history, which is that I worked at Morgan Stanley when they merged with Lehman Brothers, or no, Smith Barney.
Yeah.
And because I thought I was going to be a hedge fund guy, which I honestly don't. I still don't really know what a hedge fund is, but I thought that's what I would do. And I studied econ in college, and then took a break and worked at Morgan Stanley in '08. Had that exact same experience as you did, and realized it's just like not really part of my DNA. And I always loved movies in my life, but had never really thought about movies as like a thing that you can do for like for a living. It just had to be like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And so similar to Brandon, I drove across the country when I graduated and was just like, I don't know what, I worked for a writer-director who went to the same high school as I did, an hour as her like personal assistant, while I interviewed at HBO, which was like sort of a fluke. And I met this guy, David Levine, who now runs programming, and I just like totally merged, connected with this guy, and I was his assistant for 2 years, and it's that sort of apprentice thing, where you sort of learn. He had 60 projects in development and 5 current shows, and like it was just like grad school. I was there till like midnight every night. It was crazy. And during that time, we did True Detective, and he was too busy to watch the dailies, so I got to watch all the dailies of True Detective, Cary Fukunaga, and that's when I realized like I like directors and I like movies, and I just like that's the language I speak. And so at the end of 2 years, I thought, okay, I need to learn the movie business. I don't really know that much about it. I need to find a production company that works with great people. And so I went to Annapurna, Megan Ellison's place, and was there for 2 years, and got promoted there, and just had an absolute ball. And then at the end of those 2 years, was sort of looking for a place where I could have like a faster volume. They're a great shop, and they make like they'll make a David O. Russell movie and a Paul Thomas Anderson movie every 2 years, and everyone's like, cool. But I want to like learn to make movies with my hands, and so I ended up going to a studio, Focus.
So explain to especially our
So-
Webosphere audience, what does it mean to be a creative executive at a studio?
So the studio is broken down into two sides, acquisitions and production. I'm actually in both. And so acquisitions is simpler, which is just that a movie is made, we go to a festival and we acquire it. And we distribute it as a studio. Production is development. So we buy a book, we hear a pitch. Guys like Brandon call us, and we buy a book with a writer we like and develop it, and then add a director to it. And 3 years later, 4 or 5, 6 years later, you have a movie.
Well, it's called development, not an instant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it takes a while.
So I do both of those things, and then when the movies are actually, so right now we're shooting 3 movies, and so development's on my back burner. We're in production, and all day long we just think about the movies that we're making.
What do you do though on the production?
Well, if you're lucky, so
role.
on one of them I'll go to set, which will be a blast. The one right now is shooting in London. I'm not obviously at set up here, and I'm watching dailies like all day long, and constantly talking to the producers. And my job is essentially like I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, so my job is to flag problems for people at the top of the totem pole. It's too dark. We're not getting the coverage we need. We're falling behind schedule. The director's an idiot. Like things like that, which is not true, but yeah, if that were the case.
Yes,
Yeah.
great. And thank you for bringing up that you trained as an economist. He gave me that lead. I didn't know that about you initially. Also, neither of the two of you have worked at Wells Fargo, have you? Just saying. David, you are from SAG-AFTRA, the wonderful union guild. When did that merge, by the way?
2012,
Right.
Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA merged together.
Right, I remember that. So talk to us about what you do and the things that we talked about earlier, which I think is really important.
Sure. So I'm the chief economist for SAG-AFTRA, and I head up the Office of Media and Labor Economics. And what my group does is we look at trends in the industry, really in the entire media industry, feature films, television, digital media, sound recordings, broadcast, and we look at trends with audiences, viewership, how this content's being consumed, how does that translate into how the content is monetized, and then how does that translate into how the people who make up our membership make their living and work day to day. And then we take that learning, we educate ourselves, and we also use it to fight on behalf of our members to make sure that people can make enough to have a healthy living.
That's wonderful. I think that's wonderful. I just clicked on something that I appreciated. It just got signed, didn't it, last month? The anti-aging bill. What is it called?
It's great.
Yeah. Not that I need it or anything. Is what? Yeah, it is, right? Okay, which is awesome. Talk to us about trends you are seeing in the industry. So, for example, if you're a current student or a recent grad or a young professional trying to make your way in the industry, what do you think is important now? Either if you're in college, what should you be focusing on studying? Where should you be interning, depending on what you want to do?
Yeah, the way that I think about the world of work for people coming out of college in this industry is, are you looking for a full-time salary job, or are you looking to do freelance work? Because that's a big difference in our industry. There's a lot of kinds of jobs that are both. They offer very different kinds of opportunities. What we're seeing in the whole all industries is there's much more of a movement towards freelance work. So it may be you may be hired for 3 weeks or 3 months as a consultant. So that provides both performers that we represent and anyone looking to get into the industry with opportunities, but also things you need to be mindful of. So I would say think about where you want to be. And think critically about, what does it take to get into that role, and think critically about who the competition for that role is. Because, actors have been dealing with this, since the beginning of acting, but, more and more people are dealing with this now, is that when there's a job opportunity, there's a lot of people competing for it. And when jobs are for 1 week at a time, then you have to compete for that job very regularly. So I'd say, think very hard about what it is you want to do and know who else is doing that work so that you can be prepared to compete with them.
Thank you. I find it's interesting when I talk to students trying to explain that companies in entertainment are just company. Instead of making widgets, they make content, and that these companies need all kinds of people working for them, marketing and sales and attorneys and economists and of course, development people and the creatives, but it seems there's a disconnect, even through higher education, on understanding the whole sphere of what entertainment is and the different skill sets you could need. And we're hearing from the industry, our system, we have a council of industry leaders, and they tell us, the chancellor and the CSU system, students are lacking big data analysis skills, IT skills, business skills, marketing skills, these kind of, like teaching them how to pitch, teaching them how to present, especially if you're, going to go independent. And someone I know all the time is pitching her projects and trying to get things off the ground. And how do you understand how to do that? How do you learn how to do that? So thank you also for this segue about the difference between maybe working for a company or working for yourself, project to project, or starting your own company, because Maya could speak to that because she's had both experiences.
Yeah, hi there. I was thinking, listening to all of you, where do I start? Because I'm not the career that kind of was very trajectoried. I'm actually in a really awesome way all over the place. I actually started my first real job was both animator and QA tester for software. It was a facial motion capture software. It was actually pretty advanced for its time because it was 1999 in Israel. Highly, highly invested in. We almost got bought by DreamWorks. It was really cool. We had, I remember having prints of Steven Spielberg's email, and that was my first job. It was so awesome. And working really, really, startup jobs, working, you roll in at 10:30 in the morning and you leave at 10:30 at night or midnight every day, 6 to 7 days a week. No life, but you're 20, so you don't care. And then moving to Canada to study visual effects and animation because I thought this is what I want to do. I want to do animation. I want to control worlds. I want to, I had ANZ on my computer for a while from DreamWorks when we were working on it. It was so exciting, and I studied that. I excelled. Amazing mentors. Canada is amazing for animation and visual effects. Took a bunch of jobs. Did everything from a young visual effects supervisor to animation editing, everything in Match Music, which was like MTV. Then moved here, not here, but to San Francisco, which is its own ecosystem. And in the beginning, really try to make it for about, I think, 8 years past Vancouver times in the industry. But San Francisco is not LA. And in the beginning, it was okay. I worked with, actually told you that I worked on Shark Boy and Lava Girl as a match moving artist and visual effects artist. Robert Rodriguez's movie for The Orphanage, which was a little boutique studio next to ILM in the Presidio in San Francisco. And that was amazing. It was a great experience. Learned a lot, was working with people from Weta, just loved it. Then did a couple of shows for MTV called Video Mods, which was taking 3D characters from famous games and mashing them with famous songs. And then we did the same thing, but taking real singers and building them in 3D. Like we had Billy Idol, and we had Lil Wayne, and we had Disturbed, and we had Korn, and we built this whole system, and then we built a game around it. And we created these like crazy mashing of different platforms and different ideas. And, so I both worked on developing that game, developing the music videos, running a little art animation department, trying to do everything. So what I actually noticed, like up until then, that I'm an entrepreneur and I work in startups. And every group that I worked in was kind of a startup group, working for entertainment. And then 2008 happened, and San Francisco basically got deleted off the visual effects map. I mean, we have still ILM, we have Tippett, we have Pixar, and EA. And those are like the big ones, and then everything little was gone. Like there's a few little boutique houses. So then the competition was ridiculous to even get into these bigger companies. So at that point, after working really hard, 6-7 days a week on, and I worked in game trailers and cinematics and worked with a lot of the game companies, I think probably most of them, I decided to pivot, and I said, what is next? And I said, well, I worked in games, I worked in film, I worked in television for a little bit. I did all of these different things. I even did stop motion for a while. I've run events. I know technology because I work with technologists. I get technology because we've developed software. What else is there? And we were talking about multi-platform. So the understanding of there's an ecosystem for this whole thing, and it wraps around both entertainment and technology. How do you get jobs in that? So that was my inquiry. And part of my inquiry was establishing a group called Transmedia SF, which started as a meetup group and ran for about 4 or 5 years. I mean, we're still, in actuality, we're still around, but again, I'm pivoting, which is such a San Francisco word. I know. It's like, what are you pivoting to next? What Transmedia SF was really looking at where storytelling meets technology. So we actually, through my meetup and events and hackathons and startup weekends and meetings with everybody in town, we really looked at what is coming next in tech media and kind of really educated myself to see what is on the periphery. I mean, we ran VR events 3 years ago, and we were hanging with the SVVR and SFVR before they exploded to what they are now. And really looking at these different trends. So that has been a lot of what I've been looking at and working with companies to look at what do they put their narrative to next? Like, what do they invest in next? How do they actually move forward on this? So where I'm at right now, which is an interesting space, is also looking at clean tech, because it needs a new branding and a new narrative and a new slew of transmedia experiences that are not there yet, because that's the big new industry besides VR. Even though I'm running an event that's going to have smart city VR. So basically taking VR and creating experiences of what the cities of the future are going to look like. So moving from always, what's the narrative? What's going on here? Like, what's the new technology that's coming forward? And that's been really an interesting thing for me. So really not a cut and dry, this is exactly what I do. I'm more, as I move forward and work with a lot of people in very nascent, interesting industry, my role is literally a bridge creator and a systems thinker. I look at the whole system and go, what are the different aspects that are coming in? So for that, I need to understand a little bit of everything, but then hire the right people. So hire the amazing marketing people and hire the amazing narrative people. And even though I myself develop narrative as well, Cisco, again, as I said, it's not here, and we keep seeing this very interesting boom that's happening. But again, for instance, the VR explosion that's been happening for 3 years now, or 4 years now, is leaving a lot of the creatives, again, in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, having to decide whether they stay or have to move to San Francisco, to LA, because every big company that actually invests or develops any kind of hardware, as soon as they want to get into content, they have an office in LA. They never hire from our area, which is a problem. Which is how do we, as creators, create longevity in our careers? And I can get into also seeing what careers for a lot of people that are not in corporate are becoming, especially in the entertainment and the gig economy, and how do you thrive when that is your reality, when you have to actually jump from project to project to project. So there's a whole conversation there, and I really believe that it's an important conversation to have, because that's a lot of the future. A lot of people are going to be in the gig economy, and actually understanding how to thrive and build yourself as a brand is part of that conversation.
So it sounds like to me having a business understanding background plus marketing and sales will always help you no matter what you do, because building a brand, right? And those things are also about the story, the narrative. There's that common thread as well. What I've discovered, and I know Maya well, and our lives intersect, and I live in Northern California, so everything she's saying is spot on, and it is very maddening to, no offense to Los Angeles at all, I've lived here too, that, you know, this, oh, that's tech and we're creative. No. That's all I'm going to say. No. We're one big state. All right, no, there's the whole central thing. Like, I'll think about it. But it just drives me nuts, that whole, oh, now we'll build a VR studio in Los Angeles. Now we'll take YouTube to Los Angeles. You know, it's like, why? Okay, on the gig economy thing, though, what would you suggest young people focus on if they wanted to become a consultant or have their own independent production company or thrive, like you said? How can you encapsulate that? I know it's really hard. It's a big conversation.
Yeah, it's a huge conversation, but I think one of the biggest I think also coming down to, and as I said, one of the side things that I do a lot is really look at future forecasting trends, hang with too many futurists. And really one of the biggest things is life learning. Basically adjusting your skills all the time, like being a constant life learner, knowing how to research really well. Because, and this is actually from visual effects. I once got a gig in visual effects to do dynamics, and I'm like, I'm not a dynamics person, but I didn't tell them that. I said yes. And I was supposed to do a snow shot. So, and I had 2 weeks. So the first week was, let me find a script for Maya, the software, of snow. And it took me about a week to find it. It was snow from Happy Feet. Somebody worked on Happy Feet. I was like, thank you. And I got the script in, and then I had to, of course, to adjust it, and then a whole week to figure it out. And yeah, that shot got in. It's an indie film that was very cute and won a lot of awards, but my snow shot got in, you know, and that's part of it. It's part of, you know, you got to be constantly learning and adjusting and really moving. And I think that's, again, because I hang with the singularity people and look at future of working and look at all of these trends that are happening. And I look at it from the narrative perspective as well. What's a new narrative of work? How do we work in this future that's coming very, very, very fast? And a lot of it is really about ground yourself in knowing how you can adjust and you can adapt. That's, we're adapting and story creating creatures. This is what we do. So if we actually bring it into our skill sets, we're always going to find our ground. We're always going to be grounded. And I think
that's a great point.
Yeah.
The reason why I think that's a great point is also the industry. A lot of these people we're talking to right now in the audience and out in the and everybody here, entertainment can be vaguely soul sucking, demoralizing. I'm not going to go there, but it can take your everything you are and make you feel much smaller than you need to be. It's like that roller coaster, and you could be up 1 second and then down the next, and you're laid off here, and if you don't have that strength of character and knowing who you are to just pick yourself up and go to the next thing and know, it's not about me, it's not about me. I had a good friend who was a very high-level talent agent in New York, actually, and she said, I don't like this job at all. It's wrong hair, wrong that. I mean, it's just that black and white. And she said, and it's not the things I care about, but that's the job, and it's not about the talent of the person. And so I always try to remind the talent that it's not always about their talent. It's just luck and timing, who you know, and maybe the next thing you'll be right for. But actors especially, raise your hand if you're a performer in the room. There's a few, yeah, holy cow, yeah. So you know very well they're very highly sensitive, open people, and that's why they're good at what they do, but then there's the flip side of that. So strength of character is a really good trait. Does anyone else want to share, or are there any questions that you have? You're welcome at any time to jump in. No, he spoke, I swear. Did I miss you? I missed you in general in life, but I didn't miss you. No problem. I'll get right to you in a second, but I want to focus on any advice you have, things you learned the hard way, things you wish you knew back then that you know now, that kind of experience. But let's get to the question.
Actually,
And we'll repeat it so the webosphere can hear.
Okay, great.
You can stand up.
It's actually like a segue of what you're saying. I
Great.
was going to ask about mentoring and mentorship. I see a lot. I see in the company that I work in now how the junior agents get really great mentoring, and then they grow up. And Mr. Lawrence, you probably had this experience because you were an assistant, and then now, congratulations, you're
Thank you.
an agent. What advice can any of you give about finding the right fit or putting yourself out there correctly to get that mentoring, especially as a woman? I'm finding it that my voice isn't really heard. I'm very passionate. I work really hard, and I'm looking to meet those people where I can, do and put in that time and that grunt work.
Right. So the question is, how would you suggest, specifically maybe for a woman,
Not specific.
oh, but you,
But I just,
sorry,
it's
for anybody.
for anybody.
Okay. Aliens including. What is the best way for them to find that mentor that might get them to the next level in what they're doing? Any advice?
I would definitely say starting to use your resources, which there's this powerful tool I've heard called Google. And honestly, you would be surprised what you would find about your colleagues, people that you ran across or that you may meet. What I used to do, I legit Googled everybody that I work with, or it didn't matter if they were an assistant, it didn't matter if they were, I LinkedIn them, I looked up their past, I tried to find one piece of a commonality between us, and I didn't wait until they saw something in me. The moment I saw them in an elevator, I immediately introduced myself, and I told them, and I said, didn't you go to University of Texas? I didn't go to Texas, but the fact that they saw, they were like, oh yeah, I went to Texas. Did you? No, but it was, but that ability, my aunt did, and I just said that my aunt did, and then we started to talk about Texas football, which is what I liked, and I knew that person played football there, and I was able to make a connection, and then they're off the elevator. But that being said, I still was able to connect the dot there and looked at me differently. You can't second guess the moment. Everyone gets one first impression. So if you are the person who puts yourself out there first and you're not afraid of that awkwardness, that moment, and even if someone doesn't receive you well, it's okay.
Yeah.
There are so many people in the world who will not vibe with you, and that is totally fine. But I was never afraid of that. So I would say just put yourself out there and try to find out a piece of information about anyone around you or anyone that you're about to meet with that can connect with you, and I promise you it'll eventually work itself out.
But also, what did you have to lose? The worst thing he could say is no, thank you, and walk away.
And
It's
which
not
would be
gonna.
he would be a robot.
Right.
The one thing I would add to that, I think all that is absolutely correct. I think as you are identifying the person that you want to connect with and have as a mentor, I think step one, though, is you have to decide where you want to be, what path you're on. You have to really look around and say, where do I want to be 5, 10, 15 years from now? And is that person doing that? Are they living the way I see myself living, doing the things that I want to be doing at that time? I think is the best way to identify who then you should look to.
It's also about your opinion. I think as a creative person, whether you do long form, short form, film, digital, any kind of content, if you're a creative person and you have a point of view, foster your opinion, know what you think, and think for yourself. And if you can state that and you can put it out there, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion, but it's about finding where your opinion matches. So it's not only finding a mentor, but finding a mentor that will be meaningful in your life. And I think oftentimes I encounter people who are looking for mentors or for help or assistance, but they don't quite know what they think about things yet. So it's hard for me to figure out how to reach them and connect with them. And obviously from the mentor side, you want to feel like you're making a difference and you want to feel like you're bringing them along the path. And if you don't know what the path is, it's hard to invest in the relationship. So I tell a lot of people who are trying to break into development in any way, know what you think, and most importantly, know how you're heard. Because if you have an opinion, you need to know how to express it.
Excellent.
I have another just kind of tidbit is informational interviews. So actually requesting people that you'd like to be mentored by to just do an informational interview without any strings attached, to just get to know them. And if they say no immediately, you know that the mentorship wouldn't have happened anyways. But then you're also learning about what they do. So then you're actually going to see if it fits what you want to do in 5 years, 10 years. And last thing is really great book called Designing Your Life by the design school of Stanford Design School people. Really great book about a lot of these conversations and helps kind of bring in a design perspective to creating a life path.
Yeah, design thinking.
Yeah.
Very San Francisco of you. Josie. Sorry, her hand was up and then.
So I have a question, mainly because I'm seeing the panel and I'm seeing a huge disproportion between the men and women in the industry. And so, not to disregard the gentlemen here, but my question is for the ladies. I'm just curious to know about what were some of the challenges that you faced while entering into this industry, and maybe some of the advantages that you faced, and what you would tell like the younger generation, not just for young women, but young women of color, if you've experienced and worked with other women of color that, maybe a positive message that could be set back.
Yeah, sure. I would say, first of all, as pithy as it sounds, don't give up. That somehow, some way, somewhere, if you want it to happen, it will. And I know that sounds really metaphysical and like, just tell the universe what you want, it'll come back to you. But one of the things the best thing that I ever did for myself was be willing to adjust. Champions adjust. And if I had stayed really concrete in what my ideas were, this is what you were talking to later about pivots. If I had stayed really concrete in what my ideas were, I would probably be waiting tables in New York. But because I was willing to expand, I've heard somebody say, a mind works best like a parachute when it's open. And I was willing to look for anything, anywhere that I could. And have I experienced discrimination as a woman? Absolutely. I would be lying if I said no. Do I feel like I have fewer opportunities because I'm a woman? I don't know. Because all I know is that I take every opportunity that's thrown my way, unless it's going to be a situation where I know it's not going to be a joyful experience. And I think I don't always have that luxury. And, I work for a living. So I am working. And I also know that there are going to be periods of time when I'm not working. And so the balance of being joyful when I'm working and being joyful when I'm not working, knowing that there will be more work eventually and not giving into the fear. But that being said, to people who are starting out, to other women who are starting out, to people of color that are starting out, or people of color and women who are in the midst of feeling like everything is over, that's where I was a year and a half ago. And now I made a pivot. And it's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, I just was thinking so small that I had to think much bigger than what my tiny, teeny little brain was saying that it was limiting me. And again, it all goes back to that like psychobabble, metaphysical stuff, but actually not, because that's my worst enemy and my best friend. And, I just stopped thinking what the opportunity had to look like and just started looking for the opportunity. And so, like, one of the things that I never thought possible, ABC is launching a digital platform. It's an incubator for ABC television. And it never would have occurred to me in a million years that would be something that I would be considered for, and now I'm directing a series for it that has nothing to do with children's television. Zero. There are no children in it. But you know what? If you had asked me,
Except the actors.
They act like children. But my point is,
he said it, not me.
my point is, if you had asked me 10 years ago when I started on Hannah Montana, I would have told you I am content. If I could show up for a job like this every single day, I would be happy as a clam. And then Hannah Montana ended. And then suddenly I had to realize that where am I going to invest myself and where's the next opportunity? And it's not going to look the way I think it was. And actually, after 9 months of unemployment, I finally said, fine, I'll go to IHOP and I'll fucking wait tables again. Because my unemployment was running out and I had to let go of my ego and what it meant to be, I'm a director, man. And I was like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because somebody else pointed out to me that maybe that's where your next great story is going to come from.
Mm-hmm. And you like pancakes.
I love syrup.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's my point, is like, you just, fall 7 times, stand up 8.
And Shannon's next pivot is a self-help book. CJ, am I right? Was that your name, CJ?
Yes.
See, I listen. That's another good thing, listening.
This is for any of the panelists. Since we are in a virtual reality AR summit, as storytellers, as representatives of storytellers, and I'm hearing all of you are futurists, how are you guys staying ahead of this new technology? And how do the rest of us sort of maximize what's coming, right? It's kind of there, VR, AR, but it's not there. No one's really making that much money out of it yet, I don't think. Like, investors are getting into it and whatnot, but how do the rest of us, and how are you guys staying ahead of that game?
How are you guys staying ahead of the curve, specifically towards the AR, VR, MR world, is what I'm hearing the question is.
It's a little bit like we're all in the beginning. I love the, and I tweeted it on Facebook that somebody said that AR, VR, MR is in the Friendster level. And then a friend of mine,
Raise your hand if you know what Friendster
Exactly.
is.
So a friend of mine who's actually he's a Australian pretty leading multi-platform, like he's been doing this for years, very ahead of his time. He's like, no, actually it's in CompuServe level. So I mean, it's just, it really, I'm seeing it because I go to all of these VR events in San Francisco to see where the next hardware, HMD, for instance, AR is enterprise. AR is not, besides Pokemon Go, which is by the same people who for 6 years have been battling people to get to Ingress, the Niantic Lab people, and I have some friends who've done some of the work there. AR is really doing well in enterprise. So if you want to kind of see what's really happening in AR and keeping ahead of the game is actually seeing what the enterprise is doing.
Can you explain to the audience what that means, enterprise?
Means big corporations. Means huge oil rigs are doing AR, augmented reality experiences to how to move big pipes. We're looking at, I went to this, the augmented worlds, and they're like the leader in these events in the Bay Area, and it was mind-boggling to see that there is so much money in it, just not in entertainment. And there is even actually much more money in virtual reality, not for entertainment. So there's huge things in medicine and all of that. Real estate, tourism, yeah.
Automobile industry.
A lot of mental health, PTSD, all of that, and there's a lot of money in that. And entertainment, and actually the interesting thing, because that was another Twitter conversation that I had yesterday in one of from another brilliant multi-platform guy, is that what we're seeing a lot as more the indie content is there's all this money in VR and none of the content creators are seeing it. Like the indie content creators are barely seeing it.
And the industry is demanding content.
Exactly. And I have a bunch of friends who actually are putting their own money to create content so they can actually get in. And I actually find it to be an atrocity that needs to happen when there's so much money. So
but
I
that
think
is the norm, Maya. That's when the new comes out. It's always
the indies kind of. So I think to stay ahead is to go to these events, to try what's new, to see what experience you feel you can interact with. It's still very early on. None of us are there for more than 10 minutes at a time, in these virtual worlds. So I think really just trying to stay on the zeitgeist.
And David, could you speak to that?
Sure. So it's an area that SAG-AFTRA is looking at very closely. There seems to be a lot of potential there. I honestly don't know how much growth there's going to be. What we're doing as a union to protect our members is we have contracts in place so that when developers and producers want to create virtual reality content using professional actors, they can do so through SAG-AFTRA contracts. And we're creating them so that they are positioned for growth in the future. We honestly don't know, at least from my perspective, how much growth that's going to be.
Anyone else want to speak to that before we? Any other questions in the audience for our esteemed panel? Amazing. So
I'll add on to that. So when I worked at Annapurna, Megan Ellison is very interested in virtual reality, and has a deal with Chris Milk, which at the time was called Verse. It's now called Within. And so I got a little bit of a taste of it, and we're in terms of Focus and Universal, they're thinking of it in a different way than she is. But she's sort of thinking of it as an extension of film, where you just give Spike Jonze $1 million and he creates. It's storytelling. It's the same thing. So I think that's the good news, is that it's all the same ultimately. Like they need actors, they need cameramen, they need directors. Universal and Focus think of it as like bridges. So Mr. Robot had Sam Esmail create an amazing bridge between seasons sort of thing. So I think the good, like obviously it's so early, but the good news is that they're going to need us.
Yeah. So it sounds like right now it's more adjunct multi-platform content related to the original story, another extension of.
Well, how many people here have experienced it? Like immersive 360?
Well, you're at the right
Actually,
place.
VR.
These
Right.
very.
How many people
Are there
actually
any
experience
VR
VR?
virgins in the audience?
VR.
Actual VR, immersive VR. Yeah.
Nah, there's a difference. Yeah.
That's different.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
That they that's a huge part of it. If you want to create for it or produce it or distribute it or anything, the first step is finding a way to experience. I personally was fascinated. I've been doing a lot of kind of calling on friends and family to help me kind of figure out what it looks like and what the experience is of it. And frankly, for me personally, like 3D, I was kind of in the 3D movie world of like thinking that that's what it would be like, and I get migraines, so I can't see 3D. So I was like, okay, how's the world going to change, you know? And once you experience it, you see how much different the storytelling can be and how powerful it can be, and it begins to get your brain thinking in a totally different way about content creation, at least for me. I begin to think about storytelling in a completely different way. So when I develop projects that are television shows, they have an AR/VR component already built in, because in the longevity of a television project, if I pitch it today, I'm not making it for, 6 months at the least, a year, possibly, and then the world's going to change. So it's about forecasting what's the future and then actually knowing what it is.
I like the idea of educating yourself with the tools and technology we have now. There's no reason why you can't, especially with some of the platforms that this world is enveloping, like Unity. You can go online and learn. Even I could go online and learn Unity and create a VR game, for example. So I also was fascinated by this world about a year and a half ago, and began to educate myself and going to every single thing I could. And then I shot my own VR video, because you cannot understand it this is my personal thing, unless I know all sides of it, literally. And what I discovered, which some people on the panel will appreciate and some people in the audience, is one of the best backgrounds for working in this industry, personally, is theater and acting training, because you always live in 360. The film people that I worked with were unlearning, and I didn't have to unlearn, because I got into film after theater. So it was quite, and every time I meet, and I've met most of them, the heads of the big VR companies and all the people doing what they're doing, why aren't you hiring theater people? Not only do they need the work, but they get it. And they're born storytellers. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So, heads up, Nick. I'm not going to ask for a job, though. I'm good. So, and I saw someone back there. Well, we have time for one more question. So. Is that a question for Nick? Oh, so the question is, what's your current slate of projects, and especially in the AR/VR, those projects that you're looking at developing, how can people see what you're working on? No. Okay.
In terms of development, or in terms
Do you have any VR extensions to projects that you already have going on in the network?
We are trying right now with Designated Survivor to develop a VR component. The truth of the matter is, it's hard enough to get a television show up and going that's a network TV show. So probably, if we're fortunate enough to see a second season, which hopefully we will, we'll put that into place. That's a very good question. It depends on who finances it and who controls it, owns it, et cetera. And there's a lot of components in deal making with networks, with us as a studio, us as producers, and then our co-studio partner. So I would assume we would distribute it through ABC, because we want to drive viewers back to the original experience, because that's still what the component's going to be. It's not really monetized on its own right now, so it would be as an adjunct, experience to the show itself, probably. I think it would be through, I think it would be through everything we possibly can, in any format that we possibly can. Yeah.
I think it depends also on the platform they decide to use right now. If you know what's happening with content in AR/VR, it's the Wild West. So the minute I say this, it could change tomorrow. Which choices you make in terms of shooting, in terms of developing, and then in terms of distribution. There isn't a proper distribution channel. There's places for it.
Well, and the truth of the matter is that we're approached by advertisers, right? So if Verizon comes in and says we're going to fund it, then it's going to go on Verizon phones, right? But if Samsung comes in that says they're going to do it, it's going to go on that. So it's
Yeah.
So am I. So, you know, it depends.
They'll get there. Fingers crossed. Last question, really quick. I think we have 1 minute.
Okay, try to be really quick. That's for each of you, or Howard. So as far as brand extension, when directors are asking people to tweet for during the shows, or for when your talent is being asked to do extra stuff, at some point, even for you, that's going to be systemized. You're going to say, hey, in the contract, we're going to say my social outreach, quote, is this much of my percentage. Like, how is that going to go in the future? How's it going to get systemized? Because right now, everybody seems to be doing it for free, and they're being asked to do it for free, but they can't do it always for free. And just like with VR, doing these VR extensions, they cost money to do, but are you going to ask your director to do it for free? So then, that's what I mean, is like, how is that, these extra things that people are asked to being done, how are we paying for it? When's that going to get systemized, and how are people going to get rewarded for doing it, because they're missing time at home to do this stuff?
The question is all the extra add-ons like AR and VR. Yeah. Anybody?
Well,
how is it going to be paid for?
No, I was gonna say, for me personally, before VR, we used to do webisodes, you know what I mean, on some of the shows that I did, and I always got compensated for that extra. Now, I know that some of the journeymen and women on the show did not, and I never was comfortable with the idea that I was getting money for something that they were not. But for live tweeting or for Facebook Live or anything like that, Periscope, those things, what I know for myself and from the actors that I've worked with and the other creators that I've worked with, there's a benefit to them. There's a benefit to all of us to get our show trending on Twitter or anything, so that we can show the popularity of the show in a way. So there's a kind of be your own PR person there. And I would never, and maybe I'm a fool for this, but I would never, because it benefits me so greatly in order to be associated with something that's trending, that to me, there's a benefit to doing it for free.
It seems like there's two issues. There's your social media marketability, which is part of your career and part of your brand and what you're building. For us, Priyanka on Quantico has 14 million followers, so that will drive her price as an actress, right?
Right.
And that will be an actual, asset to our company. And then there's services, right? Creative services in AR, VR, crews, writers, producers. I get paid for my services. I think at a certain point in time, everyone has to decide when they can learn and when they can monetize. And to our point about like starting over in times, we all have to start over. So I have to learn a lot right now. But at a certain point in time, people have to draw the line in the sand and say, these are my creative services and they deserve to be paid for. But to me, it's two separate issues.
But I will say that I know an actress that was up, two actresses side by side were up for the role, and the one with the larger Twitter following got the role.
I rarely look at actresses and actors that don't have a social media following.
I mean, they do that with YouTube.
Yeah, a lot of the YouTube and influencers, right? You pay them for their performance, but if they've got a great following, you pay them, sometimes much more than their performance for their marketing capabilities, right? Just like if you're doing a TV show, you're building it into your promotional commitments. So it's really not free from my standpoint. It's built into the negotiation, which is what you just said, which is.
Okay, really quick.
Really quick, sorry. I just wanted to say
it's
that,
fine.
This is something that for years has been a part of, celebrities have been, asked to tweet as part of their compensation. We're seeing this more and more now with people who are working at scale, at the base minimums in all kinds of work. And it's happening to people outside of this industry. I know we're out of time, so I will say that hopefully this practice will end soon.
Well, so I want to thank our esteemed panel for lending us their time, talents, and just their generosity of experience. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure they'd love to talk to every single one of you afterwards. Just kidding.